Ready all cannons! Open fire!
I am the Eggman! That's what
It's about time that I covered the giant talking egg himself.
Look, it's a giant talking egg! Silence!
Dr. Eggman, introduced into the Sonic franchise alongside the Blue Blur during Sonic 1. I'm sure all of you are well aware of who he is, or at least of who he has been. Eggman has had many different incarnations and interpretations during his run, arguably having more variance in his characteristics than even Sonic himself. Regardless of which version of Eggman we talk about, they all at least are supposed to be scientific geniuses capable of performing near miraculous feats through technology and robotics. That and their shared hatred of spiky blue hedgehogs, of course. Dr. Eggman has been a great Sonic villain for the series. There is the obvious contrast of nature versus industry that was more of a focus in the earlier days, bringing great concepts such as roboticization and living power sources into the world of Sonic. Then there is Eggman's sheer narcissism and ego, which not only leads to all sorts of wacky locations and robots, but has clashed with Sonic's own attitude on numerous occasions, which creates an organic rivalry between the two on top of their existing opposition to each other.
Come and get some, Eggman!
Despite the pretty evil acts Eggman has committed over the years, like when he put that barrel there, he has managed to become a beloved character of the franchise regardless. He has been shown to be an adaptable character, making the most out of any given situation and even teaming up with Sonic every now and again. The brilliance of Dr. Eggman's character is that you both always know what to expect from him and yet can still be caught off guard by something you didn't see coming at the same time. Another core aspect to Dr. Eggman's character is his ambitions and goals. He dreams of building
Robotnik Land, the ultimate city, where I will rule it all!
and ruling a world taking after his own image, whilst being willing to do just about anything to achieve it. Time and time again, Eggman continues to aim for this despite being repeatedly defeated. Some people find that quite admirable. This goal helps give the character consistent and believable motives, and considering his other traits were constructed with this goal in mind, it is no wonder Eggman usually is always an entertaining addition. Now, when discussing Eggman, it is important to cover the topic of Robotnik. Aside from visual appearances, there is not a whole lot different between the two, and for good reason. As I'm sure many of you know, Robotnik was a name that Eggman was given when being brought over to the West to make him sound more imposing, but that meant he has in fact always been known as Eggman. Robotnik wasn't thrown away, however, rather it was adopted as Eggman's family name instead. So whilst the Robotnik in Sonic Underground, for example, behaves differently from Eggman in Sonic X, those discrepancies are due to character interpretation and not because Robotnik and Eggman are different people. Something we definitely need to cover about Eggman's characterization before we can address what went wrong with him is his cruelty, something that can often be overlooked when compared to his more outwardly quirky and welcoming traits. This scientist is one rotten egg. When Dr. Eggman powered his machines with captured tiny animals, he wasn't killing them. No, the small creatures instead were being drained slowly by the robotic prison they were trapped within, possibly feeling pain or being aware of what was going on around them whilst being powerless to stop it. What makes the situation worse is how friends and families likely have been destroyed by these operations, dooming those unable to care for themselves had Sonic not rescued them. You can see this articulated in Sonic Adventure through E102 Gamma's perspective, as the Flicky family were all encapsulated within different E-series robots. The process of roboticization that features in Sonic Sat-AM echoes this twisted mentality, as not only does Eggman capture people to power robots, but he turns them into the robots themselves. If any resistance would damage or destroy these roboticized workers, it's not just a shell that will be destroyed to set an animal free, they will be killing their own friends and family. Meanwhile, machines bearing a loved one's likeness will relentlessly and emotionlessly attempt to capture or destroy any organic resistance it comes across. This tactic creates a powerful emotional weapon against the Doctor's enemies, and it was likely something he took pleasure in.
Snively, what color is my heart?
I don't see a heart, sir.
Exactly.
Psychological warfare seems to be something Eggman either is naturally skilled at or takes great enjoyment in, even if he doesn't realise it. The Metal Sonic line of robots are like a manifestation of Eggman's hatred towards Sonic, but also of his belief that he will be able to create a more perfected, superior Sonic that obeys his every command. From the very first model, Silver Sonic, you can see this mindset behind its construction. Raw metal and whirling blades to make a tougher and deadlier Sonic, whilst lacking in any expression or even a coat of paint. A soulless replica that was built purely to eliminate the original. Having a brilliant mind is not merely a bragging point for Eggman, he has put it to good use. Eggman has created all sorts of technological innovations. Powering robots with living animals is one such feat, but it is clear his creations themselves have also been constructed with the ability to learn and harbour emotions, although it is questionable if this is what Eggman intended or not.
All you worthless hunks of junk, be gone!
Some of Eggman's megastructures are no joke either. The Death Egg is a planetary base that presumably was fully designed by him and built by his own workforce of machines, which also means he figured out the materials necessary to support the structure's weight and then the propulsion methods to get it into orbit. The Egg Carrier,
Behold my floating masterpiece, the Egg Carrier!
and the subsequent Edit Fleet are entire aerial arsenals, again at the sole command of Dr. Eggman. If he put his sights towards creating technology to help people, the Sonic world could perhaps enter a utopia-like state. But of course, Eggman sees his own methods to lead to a utopia. In fact, we have seen numerous interpretations of what Eggman considers to be the perfect society. Metallic cities with a sheer lack of any organic matter besides the Doctor himself. In Sonic CD's Bad Futures, we can see that Eggman has practically replaced the entirety of a little planet with metal, as if he had roboticized it piece by piece. Even the vegetation has purposely been replaced with metallic replicas. A completely pointless inclusion, yet one Eggman clearly was deliberate to make. Sonic Unleashed also shows us a snippet of what Eggman had planned for the world of Eggman Land. His intellect is not just useful for building machines, however. Similarly to the psychology behind roboticization, Eggman is also shown to be somewhat of a master manipulator. During the events of Sonic 3, Eggman manages to convince Knuckles that Sonic the Hedgehog will arrive at Angel Island in order to steal the Master Emerald. This ruse got the person most familiar with this mystical island to become aligned with Dr. Eggman, who would go on to massively delay Sonic's progress, all the while allowing the Doctor to reassemble the Death Egg as well as procure the Master Emerald from under Knuckles' nose. Another great example of Eggman's cunning was shown off throughout the events of Sonic Adventure 1, where he yet again tricked Knuckles into distracting Sonic long enough for him to snatch the Chaos Emerald. Except, he did more than just trick Knuckles again. He even got Sonic to work for him. Early on, Eggman reveals to Sonic and Tails that he must gather the Chaos Emeralds to defeat Chaos and gain ultimate power, demonstrating a transformation before them so that they understand the severity of his plans. By doing what appeared to be a foolish blunder on the surface, Eggman has tricked his nemesis into doing the hard work of collecting the Chaos Emeralds for him. After that, all Eggman had to do was snatch them away from Sonic. Hence his decision to have Knuckles fight Sonic, which culminated in Eggman gaining a total of 4 Chaos Emeralds when he had started with none.
That's right, fool! You made it all too easy! You practically gave them to me!
Sonic Adventure 1's portrayal of Eggman was one of his most flattering. For basically the entire story, Eggman was the one in control. He was the catalyst for all the events in the playable characters' stories. Throughout his own research, Eggman learned of Chaos's existence and potential, Acting upon this, he had the idea to use chaos as a means to raise cities to the ground, so he could build over the ruins. To this end, Eggman got to work constructing the Egg Carrier, a flying fortress which would not only be an asset in the immediate future, but should also prove fairly useful as a place to wait whilst the land is submerged beneath the ocean. That private pool and whack-a-mole game suddenly makes a whole lot more sense now. The construction of the E-Series robots were also a sign of foresight on the part of Eggman, an elite division of robots intended to complete more important missions as well as contend with the likes of Sonic and friends. Thanks to their construction, he would later receive both Chaos's missing tail and another Chaos Emerald. Speaking of Chaos Emeralds, Eggman did begin searching for them before manipulating Sonic. The blue Flicky that later befriends Amy had one in its possession, and Eggman was clearly aware of this, thus he sent the Zero E-Series robot after it when it escaped. Even near the end of the game, when Chaos rebels, we see Eggman had an entire backup egg carrier, likely anticipating Sonic may have gotten in his way based on their past encounters. All in all, Eggman was incredibly prepared throughout the game, which aided his image as an evil genius. Something that Sonic Adventure 2, and to a lesser extent Sonic 06, would follow through on. Alongside this sharp mind was also Eggman's reputation as an imposing threat. Whilst on average Eggman could be considered to behave as somewhat optimistic and confident in his actions, he could also flip the switch and become incredibly ruthless. Sonic Sat.AM did a fantastic job at showing how Eggman acts when he's taking things seriously, but some people like to discredit this appearance as his average in Sat.AM is already swung towards behaving more aggressive. Sonic Adventure still has an example though. When Sonic initially defeats Eggman, he returns to Station Square, where it is revealed he had another backup plan, a giant missile that he would launch at the city to destroy it, as originally planned. It wouldn't affect as large an area as Chaos would, but it would be enough for a starting point. Unfortunately for him, a twin-tailed fox would get in his way, and for the only time in the game, Eggman speaks in a dreadful tone as he threatens to kill Tails.
So you beat me to the missile, you little pest. I will make you all pay for this.
Get out of here!
You fool. Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
Again, in Sonic Adventure 2, Eggman takes numerous actions that would be classed as evil. The most obvious is his destruction of a large portion of the moon, which was used to threaten the Earth to submit to his supreme authority. Another act of cruelty he exhibits in Sonic Adventure 2 is the entire sequence on the Ark where he threatens Amy with a gun to get Sonic to stand on a trap, in a situation where the heroes believed they had tricked Eggman with a fake emerald. Truth was, Eggman already detected the reading of a fake emerald, so when he captures Sonic, he pretends to know it was a trick, which prompts Tails into accidentally revealing Sonic had the fake emerald.
You thought you could trick me with that fake emerald, didn't you?
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one?
Because you just told me, Fox Boy.
Then, after allowing time for Tails to feel the guilt, Eggman jettisons Sonic into space whilst they all watch as it explodes, before moving on to crush Tails. Even though Eggman was ultimately being manipulated by Shadow throughout Adventure 2, he still managed to formulate solid plans and portray himself as a legitimate threat that should be taken seriously. However, Eggman is not completely heartless. In Sonic Adventure 2, we also learned that Eggman has some limits, namely the destruction of the entire planet.
As a child, I looked up to my grandfather because of all the great things he accomplished in his life. He was my hero, and I wanted to be a great scientist like him. But did he really mean to destroy us?
We also learn how when he was younger, he was inspired to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, although perhaps he took after him a little too well.
That mad scientist!
And so this brings us to where I believe the problems with Eggman had begun. As with many things, the issues stem from the more recent era of the franchise. Dr. Eggman, slowly but surely, was being turned into a comedic character. Now, Eggman has always exhibited comedic tendencies since the beginning. I am not saying Eggman cannot have funny moments, but what I am saying is that over the years the balance of seriousness and comedic value has been skewed into comedy's favour. One of the first noticeable instances of this occurring takes place in Sonic Unleashed. Dr. Eggman is by no means a pushover here, extracting the Chaos Emeralds from Super Sonic and cracking the Earth open so that he may be able to begin constructing Eggman Land. However, Unleashed introduced a sort of companion for him, a spherical little robot that is assumedly supposed to keep Eggman up to date on his current tasks. This robot will sass Dr. Eggman numerous times for the entertainment of the audience, usually making Eggman look silly for a laugh. Jokes are obviously subjective, but for me, this robot has never made me laugh at all. The humour is a very low level, know you type of talk. Unfortunately for me though, this robot was a mere prelude of things to come. With the release of Sonic Colors, it became clear that the writers were pushing for Eggman and his bots to act as comedic relief. It is understandable to an extent. Eggman was already one of the more comedic characters in the franchise, so in theory, it couldn't hurt to dial it up a little, right? Well, it wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that Eggman is also supposed to be the antagonist that poses enough of a threat to get the very capable Sonic the Hedgehog to take him somewhat seriously. Sonic Colors doesn't fully erode away the air of authority around Eggman, and it does pull off some good comedy with him as well, but only when they are being subtle. I refer to his PA announcements he makes during the levels.
Next stop, the Sweet Mountain. Enjoying our candy paradise is the perfect way to celebrate your next birthday, or to avoid reaching it.
Those are well themed and funny, without trying way too hard. That can't really be said for the cutscenes though. Moreover, the robot from Unleashed seems to have merely been a prototype for the not so dynamic duo introduced in this game, Orbot and Cubot. Orbot and Cubot are just more of that low-level comedy I already wasn't fond of from Unleashed. Cubot in particular gets rather grating quite quickly, as his whole gimmick is that he has a faulty voice chip. Oh, and he is dumb. Very dumb. Admittedly, they do make one joke I did enjoy.
The boss man said to wrangle every piece of this mess. When you consider what we're doing from a robot's point of view, it's actually pretty gruesome.
Don't think about it.
But aside from that, they just took up time I would have rather seen used by Eggman. The problem I have with Orbot and Cubot is that they are redundant. Their main purpose for existing is to be comedic relief, which I feel like they fail at. Outside of that, they have nothing else to offer. Eggman has stood alone for years before those two were created, and he was just fine without them. The constant bickering he has with them only serves to make Eggman look more petty than intimidating. And I have to say that whilst I'm going through all the Sonic Colors footage to put this together, I'd forgotten just how much the character's dialogue and narrative had been watered down in this game.
I will have the last laugh!
The last laugh? How is laughing last special? Isn't that like being the slowest one to get the joke?
Yeah, I laugh last all the time. People look at me like I'm an idiot. Forget about it. That's because you are an idiot.
It is painful. Getting back to Eggman, he still has a few solid accomplishments, considering that he has managed to build a giant amusement park in the void of space, alongside capturing an entire alien race to act as a labour and power source, much like what he used to do to the animals on Earth. But with how often Sonic and Tails don't take him seriously, as well as his henchmen for that matter, he just comes off as a nuisance for most of the game. Sonic Lost World would regress Eggman by a few paces. Naturally, Orbot and Cubot are still here for some reason, but more peculiarly, Eggman has gone back to capturing small animals to power his old school looking badniks. I know that the reason for this was to nostalgia pander to Sonic 1, but did people really care about the little animals that popped out of a buzz bomber in Sonic 1? In-universe, this change makes no sense for Eggman whatsoever. His newer creations were far more versatile and useful than the limited functionality of his old robots. Even the egg pawns could be outfitted with different gear and operate vehicles. Besides, how is capturing wild animals a better power source than whatever he's been using for the last few years? He still has to build the robot and create the infrastructure to keep the animal inside alive whilst harnessing its energy. It probably wouldn't have taken him much longer to just add a power source at the same time. Furthermore, the game's intro makes it look like the only reason Sonic found Eggman's new operation on the Lost Hex was because he was chasing after the stolen... So if he just didn't steal animals all the way from Earth, he wouldn't have been foiled by Sonic. Sonic Lost World has numerous examples of strange character contradictions and choices, but Eggman had a moment in particular that struck me as peculiar. After being taunted by the Deadly Six, Eggman just snaps and starts punching rocks to the point where he harms his hand, going on to state,
As long as I can still strangle a Zeti, my hands are fine.
When you look at this scene alongside the entire game, the sudden severity of tone in it just comes out of nowhere. It feels completely unwarranted, almost as if the writers just spontaneously decided they want a hard-hitting scene that then never did anything like that for the rest of the game. Then there is the matter of Sonic Boom. This version of Eggman was always intended to be comedic relief, and the series in general was supposed to be more light-hearted and laid back, so I won't criticise it here. That said, during Boom's run, there wasn't any other Sonic content being released besides the comic, so there was nothing else out there to balance this portrayal. As such, the general vibe around Eggman was very much one of comedic relief, and it would be up to the next game to show us where the character would truly be headed. This brings us to Sonic Forces. Now I know that usually I have a lot of bad things to say about this game, but this time I won't be picking it apart. That is not because it has done anything good though, it is Sonic Forces after all.
You know how much that bites?
Eggman in this game has finally won. He has beaten that pesky rodent in one of the lamest fight sequences ever and can now move to conquer the world, since apparently no one else was capable of stopping him this whole time. Regardless, Eggman has detained Sonic within a prison cell on the Death Egg. It would make sense for Eggman to kill the Hedgehog, but it is also understandable why he would want Sonic to watch him rule the world. What makes less sense is why did he restrain Sonic's arms and not his legs? You would think if anyone knew how dangerous it would be to let Sonic roam freely, it would be Eggman. Ignoring that oversight, let's look at the world Eggman has created. This has been his end goal throughout the entire series. The closest he had gotten before was in Sonic Unleashed with Eggman Land. And well, I guess Sonic Chronicles as well, but that game has been deleted even more than 06 has.
First time.
You would think then that a land ruled by Eggman would be covered in neon lights, factories, monuments to his honour and that. But no. The world of Sonic Forces barely has any signs of Eggman's presence at all. Green Hill...
Green Hill's looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now.
Chemical plant... Any stage basically just has Eggman robots and maybe a single base. It is not even clear what aspects of the stages are caused by Eggman. The Casino Forest, for example. Did Eggman place all the technology there, or is this just one of those fantastical zones that is naturally a casino anyway? No one knows. This uncharacteristically lacking personality amongst Eggman's territory extends to his machines as well. For a starter, they have stuck with the classic Badnik designs for the most part, even though Eggman has far superior constructs he could utilise for world domination. However, the Egg Pawns also managed to make it in. All the returning robots have been stripped of their colour and expressive designs. Gone are the Egg Pawns' resemblance to their creator. Now they are rudimental soldiers with calculating eyes. This was clearly done with the intent of hammering home the point that Eggman is serious now. He isn't playing games anymore and will take control by any means necessary. The problem with this is that it inadvertently claims Eggman has never been serious before this point, or that he at least wasn't trying as hard as he is now, which is ridiculous. Eggman has always been plastering his image over everything he ever created. Removing that aspect from him just feels like a betrayal of his character. Earlier I brought up how the raw design of Silver Sonic helped convey Eggman's malice and hatred towards Sonic. It worked then because that machine was an imitation of Sonic, a perversion of the real thing. Eggman wanted it to look like a cold and lifeless Sonic. With his own forces though, Eggman wouldn't have a problem with them spreading his glorious vistage across his lands. It just comes off as trying too hard. In fact, that is quite an accurate description for Eggman and Sonic Forces. It comes off as he is trying too hard, at least for me. This is particularly because of how inconsistent and goofy Eggman has been portrayed in the lead up to Sonic Forces, and now that he's suddenly acting serious, I just can't buy it. He's gone from twirling his mustache and capturing squirrels to enslaving and genociding the world's population. The Eggman in Sonic Forces is clearly an attempt to pull back some of the comedic value, but the issue is that they don't just pull it back, they shot it dead. Nothing about Eggman is intentionally supposed to make you laugh here.
Sonic, how I hate him.
He is devoid of all humour, which has never been the case before. Even Sat-AM Eggman was shown to be a little silly at times. Sonic Forces tries to get you to believe that Eggman is at his ultimate form, with the not-so-dynamic duo telling the audience to fear him just in case they didn't get the memo.
The boss means business this time.
Compared to the other Sonic characters, Eggman has not had it as bad. Just because I feel the character has worsened doesn't mean I'm saying he is in as dire a state as, say, Shadow currently is. I do believe, however, that his inconsistent behaviour in the recent era has eroded the Doctor's presence somewhat. He doesn't need to become a clown, nor does he need to act as a generic villain. The Eggman of old was already a well-nuanced character, with identifiable traits, consistent goals, and complex enough character to take part in numerous stories. The Eggman of today is hard to truly take seriously, and if the antagonist doesn't pose a threat, then how are the heroes supposed to take the story themselves seriously? This is where Sonic went wrong with Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik. And so ends another video in the Where Sonic Went Wrong series. I guess I lied about going easy on Sonic Forces. What can I say? That game has so many faults it's hard not to. Anyway, I would like to thank you for getting this far into the video. If you enjoyed it, please share it amongst your friends, and perhaps take a look at some of my other videos. I hope you have a great day, and see you next time.